I'm John Nintendo, and thank you for joining me for this very important Nintendo Direct. The Switch 2 has had a disappointing launch of only 6 million units sold compared to its predecessor's 153 million units sold. We prepared for this though. As a company constantly paving the way for innovation, we knew a successor to the Nintendo Switch would be a flop. That's why we looked into our past to see what has worked. Looking at this sales chart, please notice how the Wii U sold almost 17 times as many units as the Virtual Boy. Clearly, we had something special there, so we are thrilled to announce the next generation of Nintendo, the Wii U 2. To make this a truly unique gaming experience, we added a highly requested feature, a second D-pad. Prices start at $799.99. The Switch 2 released just over 2 months ago, and I was lucky enough to snag it on launch day. Here's what its build-up to release was like, the uncertainty I went through to get it, and what I think of it so far. I remember sitting in my living room before school, just scrolling Instagram Reels or something, when I got a YouTube notification saying Nintendo posted a video. The video was originally just called An Update from Nintendo, and I remember seeing that and thinking, oh my gosh, what if it's about the Switch 2? And sure enough, it showed the new console, mouse controls, a new Mario Kart game, and even announced a Switch 2 Direct coming in April. I went to school that day and wouldn't shut up about the thing to my friends, even though there was a lot we still didn't know. I knew one thing for sure though, I was going to do everything in my power to get that console on launch day. The Switch 2 Direct started at 8 AM in my time zone. My classes started at 8:10, so I was just barely able to watch the beginning segment about Mario Kart before school started. But I spent the whole day trying to find out as much information as possible about the console before I was able to watch the Direct. Every single time I had a moment of work time that day, I immediately searched Switch 2 on Google and tried finding a news website that wasn't blocked on our school Chromebooks. I'd only expected the system to be $400, so the fact that it was $450 was a bit surprising to me, but I understood it. I've seen a lot of people complain about it, but in my mind, considering how the Switch to the Switch OLED was a $50 jump and that the OLED was $350, I could see how Nintendo may not want to value the Switch 2 at only $50 more than that. Either way, I could see that I'd really have to save for the next 2 months in order to afford the thing, and I started planning everything out. I even made a note on my phone where I listed all the different prices of the accessories, how much I had saved up, eventually even listed when different stores opened, in case I needed to rush Walmart at 6 AM for the thing. After months of waiting, I was ready to play the Switch 2, and I had plan after plan to make sure I got it. I'd signed up for an invite directly from Nintendo immediately after the Switch 2 Direct, so I was sure that I would get it on May 8th. Okay, well, plan B. GameStop was doing a midnight launch where, as I understood it, you would go and pre-order the console around 3 PM, and then you would show up later that night and pick it up. I worked that afternoon, so I sent my friend there with a bag of $600 in cash and very specific instructions saying that he was buying the console for me, and that all I wanted was the base console and Joy-Con 2 controllers. I'd been able to pre-order everything else beforehand, and I thought the plan was foolproof. He got to the store, all seemed well, and then... Hello? What's that? They're only offering a $700 bundle with a console, a controller, and a game? That's stupid. Yeah, so my plan B had fallen through, and I was really starting to stress because my plan C was waiting outside of Best Buy until midnight. If that didn't work, then my plan D would be sending someone to go to Target at 7 in the morning and hope that they had a console there. When I told my dad my plan about waiting outside of Best Buy, he thought it was insanely nerdy, but he wanted to be there with me. We pulled up to the store around 9 PM, and to our horror, there was already a line of about 50 people in front of us. We went to the back of the line, but luckily, we got a glimmer of hope. Right after we got in line, 2 employees from the store came out and got in line behind us. If they knew how many consoles there were, and saw how many people were in line in front of us and still got in line, that had to mean that there were enough consoles, right? Right? They mentioned that there would be tickets handed out at a certain point guaranteeing people a Switch 2. And sure enough, around 9:30, some other employees came out and handed us all advertisements for Switch 2 accessories. I was a little disappointed, but honestly, I was so excited about possibly getting a console that seeing a printed photo of the Switch 2 camera and Pro Controller got me giddy. Employees came out a second time, but this time they were handing out that fabled piece of paper from earlier. They asked me whether I wanted the base console or Mario Kart World bundle, and I chose the base console. Was I ensuring that I had to waste an unnecessary $30 on Mario Kart physically? Yes, but I prefer physical games and I didn't want a Mario Kart sticker on my Switch 2 box. At my location, Best Buy opened the doors at 11 p.m. for people to start getting their consoles, and they only let 2 people in from each of the pre-order and non-pre-order lines, meaning it took forever to get to the front door. But still, I was super excited. I wasn't even sure if I was going to get the console earlier that day, and I'd been following everything about it for the past 5 months, so I didn't care how long the line was. Finally, after 3.5 hours of waiting outside of a Best Buy, I was holding the Nintendo Switch 2 in my hands. I remember getting in the car and immediately opening the box, messing with the Joy-Cons, and admiring everything about the console. Despite the fact that I worked early that next morning, I stayed up late just going through settings and downloading Welcome Tour and Deltarune. I even posted this photo on my Snapchat story, which strangely enough did not get every woman in a 10-mile radius to talk to me. Regardless, that night was probably the most excited I've ever been for something, and that feeling of childlike wonder snapping the Joy-Cons on was amazing. Now please keep in mind that this was highly anticipated for me, and that I might still feel a little defensive about spending over $1,000 on a video game console and its accessories, but I think it's really cool. I love the design of it, like I love the loud colors of the original Switch, and I felt like it gave that system personality, but I feel like the mostly black design with the colored accents just make this feel very modern and grown up, despite the fact that it's most likely not going to be playing the most mature games. I do appreciate how the screen is 1080p and can do 120 frames per second, because there is a very clear difference between it and the original Switch in that aspect. It's not OLED though, which is a bummer. The magnetic mechanism for the Joy-Cons is so cool. Whenever I play in handheld mode, I'm constantly just pulling them off and snapping them back on, which makes the system a little mad, but it's so much fun. The mouse mode is also fun and seems to work pretty well when I use it. I can tell it's a bit more finicky using it on my lap, but it is more than usable and I've had no issues. The kickstand looked flimsy to me in the original trailers for the console, but it's surprisingly strong and works great as a stand or handle. I also love the charging port on top of the system, which is very useful. The battery life isn't great, only lasting about 2 hours in my experience, but that's good enough for my use case, and I'm not generally away from an outlet for longer than 2 hours. Over the past 2 months, I have gotten a couple of games for the system, and while I think Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza could warrant their own reviews, I think Switch 2 Welcome Tour fits in here. First off, I think it's a fun little experience. I thought his games were fun, his tech demos were interesting, and I actually thought it was cool reading the explanations for different design choices and the thoughts behind them. Plus, the stupid cat photo I thought was funny. Personally, I think the game could be $10 worth of enjoyment to someone like me, who's interested in the ins and outs of their shiny new console, but the fact that it's Switch 2 Welcome Tour and is basically the Switch 2 equivalent to Astro's Playroom on the PS5 and it isn't a pack-in is definitely a little absurd. I would only recommend it if you're a big Nintendo dork like me. Those are my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch 2 after 2 months with it and an abridged version of my struggle to get it at launch. Of course, I could go more in depth with my review of the console and its many accessories, but that had to be for a later time. For now, see you later, and let me know what you think of this more personal take on Nintendo content.